The office is empty now. Only the hum of old lights and the faint smell of paper left behind. You flip through a worn notebook, the one you kept when no one was looking. Between its tired pages, an idea you planted years ago finally stirs. A message pings, a long-awaited yes, and for a moment the silence feels alive. You realize this didn't happen overnight. It just bloomed when it was ready. Some seeds need the dark to germinate. Growth that looks invisible is often the kind that lasts. You weren't stalling. You were gathering density, building roots before bloom. Late isn't failure, it's precision. Napoleon Hill called it definite purpose, knowing where your energy belongs and refusing to scatter it. He spoke of specialized knowledge and disciplined alliances. Slow architecture, not instant applause. That's how quiet workers turn patience into leverage. There's a difference between fast visibility and durable credibility. The first burns bright and brief. The second burns steady and clean. You didn't miss your moment. You made it mature. So let the noise chase its next new thing. Your rhythm is measured, your progress compounding, your harvest unhurried. The seed you tended in silence will hold longer, because it learned stillness first, and soon we'll touch a sentence that cools rooms addicted to speed, a phrase that restores calm to the ones who build slow and stay true. Being a late bloomer isn't about delay. It's about design. The world measures in speed, but growth has its own tempo. Slow doesn't mean stuck. Patient doesn't mean passive. Private doesn't mean small. It only looks that way from the outside. Where noise is mistaken for momentum, you've seen it happen. Peers sprint ahead, announcing launches and milestones while you're still sketching frameworks in notebooks no one reads. It stings sometimes, that feeling of invisibility. But years later, when the rush thins and the numbers fade, your work still holds. What took longer to form took longer to forget. That's the quiet justice of ripening. You trade early applause for lasting weight. The real model is simple. Aim, accrue, appear. First set direction, then gather substance. Only after that does visibility arrive, like fruit after root. Appear last and you'll stay longest. You're not behind. You're building bone. Surface speed makes things brittle. Density makes them endure. Life that ripens late holds its own shape because it wasn't grown in borrowed air. It was fed by solitude, by thought, by the discipline of waiting without withdrawal. So take your time, not as rebellion, but as respect for what deserves fullness before exposure. The world will call it late. You'll know it is ready. Tomorrow morning we'll open Hill's ledger, the way he turned slow hours into capital, patience into compound interest. It's simpler than it sounds, and once you see it, you'll never rush the clock again. Napoleon Hill was less a preacher of hustle than a collector of patterns. He studied persistence the way a watchmaker studies gears, tracing how clarity and alliances turned scattered effort into compounding progress. His notes weren't about lightning strikes or slogans. They were about architecture, definite purpose first, specialized knowledge second, organized effort to bind them, and persistence steady enough to outlast boredom. He knew belief isn't magic. It's evidence repeated until trust builds naturally. You don't chant your way into confidence. You earn it by keeping small promises daily. That's how the compass holds when the map disappears. Picture a moment. 3 new detours glint on the horizon, each promising faster results, louder praise. You pause, feel the pull, and still choose your single stream. One direction, clear and narrow. You know now that the road's reward isn't speed, but survival. Direction beats velocity when the road is long. Fast travelers tire early. Focused ones arrive intact. That's Hill's real inheritance, the wisdom to move with aim, not anxiety. Purpose quiets noise. It turns envy into study, comparison into calibration. When you know what you're building, even silence feels like progress. Soon we'll keep that progress visible. There's a 2-minute quiet ledger that records your small gains, the kind that pay interest daily without the world ever noticing. Growth doesn't announce itself. It accumulates in quiet spirals. Picture a tree from the inside out, each ring laid down in darkness, invisible until years later when someone counts the story in its grain. Strength forms before spectacle. What looks still from the outside is actually layering density beneath the bark. That's the physics of ripening. Capability multiplied by consistency, adjusted by calibration, the small corrections that keep growth aligned. CXKXD. The formula isn't poetic, but it's honest. Each factor matters. Skill without rhythm burns out. Rhythm without adjustment stalls. When all three cooperate, the result surfaces naturally without performance. Exhibition is easy. Accumulation is patient. The first feeds on eyes. The second feeds on craft. Crowds chase the visible breakout, but the substance was built long before applause arrived. That's why respect, the durable kind, doesn't come from frantic output. It comes from tempo, from showing up with the same pulse whether seen or unseen. You can feel when someone has ripened. Their pace slows, their sentences shorten, their certainty quiets. They're no longer trying to prove capacity. They're using it. Pressure didn't crack them. It compacted them, turned carbon into structure. This is what late blooming really means, an internal gravity forming long before recognition. The breakout isn't a miracle. It's math catching up to time. Next, we'll take this slow strength into conversation. Watch how a calm tempo bends a room towards stillness and makes noise listen for once. It always starts small. One deep skill learned slowly becomes the spine. You practice after hours, not for praise but for precision. Then one proof artifact, a design, a page, a model, something real enough to point to when words feel thin. Finally, one distribution ally, the person who sees its worth and carries it where you can't. That's the quiet stack. Depth, proof, leverage, alliance. The protocol is simple. Learn, ship. Show. Learn one concept that sharpens the craft. Ship a small version into the world, imperfect but alive. Show it, not to boast but to document motion. Repeat weekly. Over time, tiny artifacts become evidence. Evidence becomes trust. If it compounds, it counts. The size never matters, only the repeatable yield. A quiet stack isn't built in conferences or coffee chats. It's built in the steady rhythm of making. 10 networking coffees can't equal one undeniable deliverable that speaks when you're asleep. Late bloomers win here. With less noise to maintain, their energy funnels into proof instead of posture. They trade social oxygen for structural integrity. Each layer strengthens the next, and eventually, opportunity has no choice but to notice. So keep stacking, quietly, steadily, cleanly. Every shipped fragment is a receipt for your persistence. Soon, we'll return to those. High-pressure rooms and the sentence that resets them, the one line that clears noise and lets authority breathe. There's a certain shine to exhaustion, the kind that makes calendars glow and faces tighten with pride. You scroll through updates, everyone sprinting, everyone visible. Deadlines stack, sleep shrinks, applause flashes bright and brief. For a moment it feels holy, like hurry itself is proof of worth. But under the surface, judgment dulls and dignity frays. The show of urgency taxes exactly what it claims to reward, your discernment. Think of your time in two currencies, optics hours and leverage hours. Optics by appearance, meetings, updates, visible grind. Leverage buys outcome, thinking, building, refining. The first feeds the feed. The second feeds your future. Most people spend the day polishing mirrors and wonder why nothing moves. Your slowness is craftsmanship. The calm that so swap the sugar of busy work for the protein of depth. Practice, prototypes, proofs. The world remembers what lasts, not what trends. You'll find that once the optics fade, leverage keeps paying interest quietly in the background. Rest isn't rebellion. It's maintenance for precision. Let the crowd sprint. You're building form, not spectacle. And soon, we'll try something different. A 2-minute ritual that turns waiting itself into wealth, teaching patience to pay you back. The room is still dark when you sit down at your desk. A warm lamp pools light over a small card that reads Ledger. Steam hums from the kettle, the quiet kind of sound that softens the morning edges. This is where you reprice your day, not by urgency but by value. 3 moves, simple and slow. First, name the aim. What's the single direction that makes everything else lighter? Write it once, plainly. No slogans, just clarity. Second, price the yes. Every commitment costs something: attention, energy, presence. Ask if the return matches the withdrawal. Most don't. That awareness alone saves hours. Third, pick the smallest irreversible rep. One action so modest it can't be resisted, but once done, it changes the next step. 1 email, 1 line of code, 1 sketch. Small but irreversible, the start compounds quietly. Rent status. Own competence. Applause can vanish overnight, but skill stays and keeps earning. The pen scratches, the kettle cools, your shoulders drop. The pace slows to match your thinking, and the day starts to cooperate instead of command. Repeat this before replies, before meetings, before decisions that might spend more than they earn. 2 minutes, 1 card, 1 steady hand. The ledger doesn't judge. It just balances. Next, we'll carry this calm arithmetic into conversation. Watch how it steadies the air before words even begin. They want speed again. The partner's voice is bright with momentum. If we launch this week, we'll own the moment. You can feel the pressure disguised as optimism. The old reflex stirs to match their tempo to prove you care. Instead, you breathe once, let the air lengthen and step into slower gravity. You mirror one fact. I hear that timing feels critical to you. The statement cools the room, naming urgency without feeding it. Then you ask 1 number. What's the smallest metric we can verify before launch? Something real we can measure. The question shifts the focus from theater to evidence. Finally, you propose 1 next proof by date. Let's run a 3-day test. If the data holds, we move Friday. The silence that follows isn't resistance, it's recalibration. You've replaced heat with structure. The noise that tried to hurry you now listens for clarity. Respect rises not from dominance but from discipline. This is how late bloomers lead, with pace and proof. Authority doesn't shout. It steadies. Gravity belongs to those who hold tempo when everyone else forgets the rhythm. You're no longer reacting. You're designing the room's pulse. Urgency, once hungry, loses oxygen in the calm. Ideas settle. Real decisions begin. The meeting ends not with applause but alignment, the quieter kind that lasts. Next comes the single sentence for rooms on fire, the line that cools conflict faster than any clever defense ever could. The sentence is simple, almost invisible. Let's slow this down so we can see what's true. It fits anywhere: meetings, arguments, storms of opinion, and it never needs defending. It doesn't accuse or retreat. It just reclaims oxygen. Picture a chaotic stand-up. Voices overlapping, deadlines collapsing, someone insisting that now is the only time that matters. You feel the room tilting toward panic. You lift your head, wait half a breath, and say it. Let's slow this down so we can see what's true. The words cut no one, yet everything softens. Breathing returns. The focus shifts from noise to evidence. What felt urgent a minute ago now feels solvable. Authority is the quiet that survives pressure. Not the loudest, not the fastest. The one who keeps clarity when heat rises. That's late bloomer power. Steadiness built in long hours of unseen patience. Hill's compass still guides it, purpose before motion. When you know the aim, you set the pace, and when you set the pace, you keep your power. Speed becomes a tool, not a leash. Each time you use the sentence, it leaves a small trace, a rhythm others start to trust. Over weeks, that rhythm becomes posture. Over years, it becomes identity. Calm is no longer a tactic. It's your native air. Next, we'll see what that calm leaves behind. The quiet legacy that outlasts applause and feels like home. The life that comes after the rush is quieter, but it fits. The days fill not with announcements, but with artifacts, work that holds its own weight. Alliances deepen instead of multiply. Conversations last longer, breathe easier. You no longer chase recognition. It arrives, sits politely, and leaves when it must. The room you once fought for now expands with every measured choice. Back at the same desk where the first seed stirred, the roots have thickened. You move slower now, not from fear, but from fluency. You choose timing instead of waiting for permission. The silence that once felt lonely now feels earned, a space wide enough to think, to build, to rest. You keep the ledger close. Before every reply, every decision, every sleep, it waits beside the lamp. 2 minutes to name the aim, price the yes, pick the smallest irreversible step. The ritual that began as survival has become your rhythm. Guard your pace. It will guard your power. Speed may flatter the crowd, but steadiness fortifies the soul. The bloom that holds isn't the one that opened first. It's the one that learned the weather and stayed. The light fades, not as an ending, but as an exhale. Somewhere a chair waits by the window for the rare and the patient, the ones who found that belonging isn't granted by applause, but grown through tempo and truth. You've earned your seat. The work breathes with you now.